The death of Kathleen Peterson did not begin as a mystery. It began as an explanation. On December 9, 2001, Michael Peterson told police his wife had fallen down the stairs. She had been drinking. She had lost her balance. She had slipped. It was tragic, sudden, and accidental. At first, there was no reason to doubt him. But as investigators stood inside the Peterson home that night, they were confronted with something that did not match the simplicity of the explanation. Blood. Not just blood on the floor, blood on the walls, blood along the staircase, blood smeared, streaked, and splattered. It was not the presence of blood that raised concern. Falls can cause catastrophic injuries. Scalp wounds bleed heavily. What unsettled investigators was the distribution. And from that moment forward, the case would revolve around interpretation. Michael Peterson was not a stranger to attention. He was a novelist, a newspaper columnist, a decorated Vietnam War veteran. He moved comfortably in political and social circles in Durham, North Carolina. He knew journalists. He knew attorneys. He understood narrative. Kathleen Peterson was equally formidable. She was an executive at Nortel Networks, earning significantly more than her husband. She supported the household financially. By most accounts, she was disciplined, ambitious, and deeply involved in her career. Their marriage, outwardly, appeared stable, but investigators are trained to look beyond outward stability. On the night Kathleen died, Michael Peterson said they spent the evening by the pool, drinking wine. Kathleen eventually went inside. Michael stayed outside longer than usual. When he entered the house, he found her at the bottom of the staircase, still alive but severely injured. He said she was breathing. He said she was attempting to speak. He said he tried to help her. Then he called 911. The call itself would later be played repeatedly in courtrooms, documentaries, and debates. Some hear panic. Others hear calculation. Some hear desperation. Others hear detachment. What you hear often depends on what you already believe.
Prosecutors would later argue that Michael Peterson attacked his wife with a blowpoke, a long metal fireplace tool. The theory was precise. The weapon explained the injuries. The motive, they argued, was exposure. During the investigation, police uncovered evidence that Michael Peterson had engaged in sexual relationships with men, something Kathleen may not have known. Prosecutors suggested that she discovered this information, confronted him, and that the confrontation escalated into violence. It was a powerful narrative. It combined secrecy, betrayal, rage, but narratives require evidence, and the blowpoke became a problem. Despite extensive searches, the alleged murder weapon was never conclusively found. One blowpoke, initially presented by police, was later shown to belong to a neighbor. Another was found years later, untouched, casting further doubt on the prosecution's theory. No fingerprints, no blood residue, no clear weapon. Yet the absence did not derail the case. Instead, attention shifted to bloodstain pattern analysis. Bloodstain pattern analysis would become the spine of the prosecution's argument. Experts testified that the blood on the staircase walls showed cast-off patterns, droplets flung from a weapon during repeated blows. They pointed to directionality, to shape, to spacing. To jurors, this testimony sounded scientific. It sounded exact. But bloodstain analysis occupies a complicated space in forensic science. It relies heavily on interpretation, on experience, on probability. And probability does not equal certainty. The defense argued that Kathleen's scalp lacerations could have been caused by a fall, that head wounds bleed profusely, that prolonged bleeding could account for the scene. They pointed out the absence of skull fractures, the absence of defensive wounds, the absence of a weapon. But juries do not evaluate science alone. They evaluate credibility, and credibility is shaped by story. Then, the prosecution introduced a detail that changed everything. Years earlier, while living in Germany, Michael Peterson had been close friends with a woman named Elizabeth Ratliff. She was found dead at the bottom of a staircase. Her death was ruled an accident. Michael Peterson discovered the body. Michael Peterson was present. Michael Peterson later adopted her children. Prosecutors argued the similarity was too great to ignore. 2 staircases, 2 women, 1 man present both times. The defense argued coincidence. The court allowed the jury to hear it, and from that moment, the case took on a darker gravity. This was no longer just about blood patterns. It was about pattern itself. Humans are wired to see repetition as meaning. Once the jury heard about the Germany case, the staircase stopped being just a staircase. It became a symbol. Michael Peterson testified in his own defense. He was articulate, controlled, confident. Some jurors found him credible. Others found him rehearsed. His calm demeanor, once a strength, became a liability in the eyes of some observers. Why wasn't he more emotional? Why wasn't he more broken? These are unfair questions, but trials are human processes, and humans judge emotion. In 2003, Michael Peterson was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. For many, the case was closed. For others, it was just beginning.
Years later, cracks began to form. A key prosecution expert, Duane Deaver, was found to have overstated the reliability of bloodstain analysis in multiple cases. Courts ruled that he had provided misleading testimony. This revelation shook the foundation of the Peterson conviction. Michael Peterson was granted a new trial. The certainty collapsed. At the same time, the Staircase documentary series reached a global audience. Cameras captured defense strategy, private conversations, legal frustration. Critics accused it of bias. Supporters argued it exposed reality. What it undeniably did was remove the illusion of finality. Another theory emerged, the owl theory. Defense experts suggested Kathleen may have been attacked by an owl while outside. Talons could explain the lacerations. Feathers were reportedly found. Disorientation and blood loss could explain the fall. To some, the theory sounded absurd. To others, it explained what no weapon ever did. The jury never heard it. In 2017, Michael Peterson entered an Alford plea. He maintained his innocence while acknowledging the state could convict him. He was released, legally guilty, factually unresolved. Kathleen Peterson remains dead. Michael Peterson lives free, and the staircase remains. When Michael Peterson was granted a new trial, the case entered a different kind of uncertainty. Not the uncertainty of whether a jury would convict again, but the uncertainty of whether the original truth could ever be reconstructed at all. Years had passed, evidence had aged, memories had shifted, certainty had eroded, and the science that once appeared solid had begun to fracture. The collapse of bloodstain pattern analysis as unquestioned forensic authority reshaped the entire case. For decades, bloodstain analysis had been presented in courtrooms as near-exact science. Experts testified with confidence. Diagrams were drawn. Conclusions were delivered with certainty. But outside the courtroom, the discipline faced growing criticism. Studies revealed high error rates. Interpretations varied widely between analysts. Results depended heavily on subjective judgment. In the Peterson case, Duane Deaver's testimony had been pivotal. He described the blood patterns as proof of repeated blows. He dismissed alternative explanations. He framed probability as certainty. When courts later ruled that Deaver had overstated his conclusions in multiple cases, the implications were profound. If the science was flawed, the story built upon it could not stand unexamined. This did not mean Michael Peterson was innocent. It meant the foundation of certainty had cracked. And once certainty cracks, everything above it becomes unstable. As the case reopened, defense attorneys revisited the autopsy findings. Kathleen Peterson had suffered multiple lacerations to the scalp, but she had no skull fractures, no brain swelling consistent with repeated heavy blows, no defensive wounds on her arms or hands. These facts had always existed. They simply had not carried equal weight. Prosecutors argued that a weapon could cause lacerations without fracturing the skull. The defense argued that falls could produce similar injuries, especially on a narrow staircase with sharp edges. Both arguments were plausible, and plausibility is the enemy of finality. The Germany case returned to focus. Elizabeth Ratliff's death years earlier had been ruled accidental at the time. The medical examiner in Germany had found no evidence of homicide. No charges were filed. Only after Kathleen Peterson's death was the case revisited. American prosecutors exhumed Ratliff's body and conducted a new autopsy. They concluded her death was a homicide. 2 autopsies, 2 conclusions. Which one was correct? Or were both shaped by context? Critics of the prosecution argued that confirmation bias entered the process. Once investigators believed Michael Peterson was capable of killing one woman, it became easier to believe he had killed another. Supporters of the prosecution argued that coincidence only stretches so far. 2 women, 2 staircases, same man present. Pattern again replaced probability. This is where the staircase becomes less about crime and more about epistemology. How do we know what we know? How much certainty does evidence actually provide? And when experts disagree, who decides which version becomes truth? The documentary itself complicated matters further. Unlike traditional crime reporting, the staircase placed viewers inside the defense team. Cameras recorded strategy discussions, private doubts, moments of hope and frustration. This access created intimacy. It also created bias. Viewers were invited to experience the case emotionally, not just analytically. Critics argued this tilted sympathy towards Michael Peterson. Supporters argued it revealed the human cost of prosecution.
Both interpretations coexist, but neither erases the effect. Once the audience sees the machinery of justice from the inside, it becomes harder to accept outcomes as neutral. The owl theory emerged during this period of re-examination. At first, it sounded absurd. An owl attack? But the more experts examined Kathleen's injuries, the less absurd it appeared. The lacerations on her scalp were long, thin, and irregular. Some resembled talon marks. Microscopic feathers were reportedly found in her hair. Pine needles were discovered near her body. The theory suggested Kathleen had been attacked outside, perhaps while carrying decorations. Disoriented and bleeding, she stumbled inside and fell down the stairs. It explained the blood. It explained the wounds. It explained the absence of a weapon. What it did not explain was timing, and timing is everything. The jury never heard the owl theory. It emerged too late. In criminal justice, timing often determines truth as much as evidence. As Michael Peterson faced the possibility of another trial, the reality of the system became clear. Winning outright exoneration would require overcoming not just evidence, but institutional exhaustion. Prosecutors had invested years. Victims' families sought closure. Courts prioritized finality. The system does not like reopening old wounds. Michael Peterson's decision to enter an Alford plea reflected this reality. By pleading guilty while maintaining innocence, he acknowledged the risk of conviction without admitting guilt. It was a legal compromise, a strategic surrender. He was released from prison, but the truth was not freed with him. Today, Michael Peterson lives with the paradox of legal guilt and personal denial. Kathleen Peterson's family lives with permanent loss, and the public lives with unresolved doubt. No verdict can fully satisfy all parties, because the case was never just about one night. It was about how evidence is framed, how expertise is trusted, how narratives harden. The staircase forces a confrontation with forensic certainty itself. Science evolves, methods improve, conclusions change, but verdicts are static. Once rendered, they resist revision, even as the foundations beneath them shift. This tension defines modern true crime. Some believe Michael Peterson is guilty and escaped accountability. Others believe he was convicted on flawed science and narrative momentum. Both positions can be argued, neither can be proven conclusively. And that is why the case endures, not because of sensationalism, but because it exposes a fundamental weakness. Justice requires certainty. Truth often refuses it. The staircase itself remains unchanged, a narrow passage, hard steps, sharp edges. It has become more than architecture. It is now a symbol of fallibility, of interpretation, of the danger of mistaking confidence for truth. Kathleen Peterson died there. Michael Peterson's life fractured there, and the justice system revealed its limits there. When people ask what really happened that night, the honest answer remains unsatisfying. We do not know, and we may never know. But what we can know is this: cases like the staircase are not anomalies. They are warnings. Warnings about certainty, warnings about expertise, warnings about how easily narrative outruns doubt. Truth does not always arrive cleanly. Sometimes it arrives fractured, sometimes it arrives too late, and sometimes it never arrives at all.
By the time the staircase reached its later chapters, the case had quietly transformed into something larger than Michael Peterson. It had become a referendum on how truth is constructed inside modern justice systems. Not discovered, constructed. True crime at its best reveals the machinery behind verdicts. At its worst, it replaces one narrative with another and calls it clarity. The staircase exists uncomfortably between those extremes. It does not tell viewers what to think, but it guides where they look, and where we look shapes what we see. Michael Peterson was not a blank slate. He was articulate, educated, comfortable in front of cameras. That mattered. Jurors are human, viewers are human, prosecutors know this. Charisma does not prove innocence, but neither does awkwardness prove guilt. Still, perception matters, and perception is never neutral. Kathleen Peterson, meanwhile, risks becoming a secondary figure in her own story. That is the danger of long-form true crime. The victim fades into abstraction, the accused becomes the lens. But Kathleen was not a theory. She was a person, a mother, a professional, a life that ended violently and inexplicably. Her absence is the only undisputed fact. As debates raged online and across media, families on both sides lived with consequences far from the screen.
The Peterson children fractured in belief. Kathleen's family endured years of reopening grief. Jurors carried doubt long after deliberation. The justice system moved on. People did not. What the staircase exposes is not a single failure, but a pattern seen in Avery, in Peterson, in countless lesser-known cases, where early assumptions harden, where experts overstate certainty, where narrative momentum overwhelms doubt. Once a theory takes hold, evidence stops being explored and starts being arranged. The role of forensic experts demands scrutiny. Juries are told science does not lie, but science is not a verdict machine. It is a process, a method, a set of probabilities. When presented as certainty, it becomes dangerous. The Duane Deaver scandal did not just affect Peterson, it called into question dozens of convictions. How many remain unexamined? Then there is the role of prosecutors. They are not neutral investigators, they are advocates. Their job is to win. The system depends on ethical restraint to balance that incentive, but restraint is invisible, victory is visible, and careers are built on convictions. Defense teams, by contrast, are tasked with sowing doubt, not proving innocence, proving uncertainty. That distinction is often lost on the public. A not guilty verdict does not mean innocent. It means the system failed to eliminate doubt, and doubt is not failure, it is protection. Michael Peterson's Alford plea crystallizes this tension: legally guilty, personally defiant. A man freed without vindication. This outcome satisfies institutions. It satisfies almost no one else. The owl theory remains emblematic of the case's unresolved nature. It fits some evidence, it strains belief, it cannot be tested. That makes it deeply uncomfortable, but discomfort is not disproof. Courts prefer clean explanations. Reality often resists them. The staircase itself remains ordinary. That may be the most unsettling detail. No dramatic cliff, no remote forest, no exotic weapon, just a domestic space. Which forces a harder question. If this could happen anywhere, how confident are we in our reconstructions? The documentary's greatest contribution is not exoneration or condemnation, it is exposure. Exposure of how cases are built, how experts influence juries, how narratives replace nuance, and how certainty is often manufactured, not discovered. True crime audiences crave answers, but cases like this deny closure. They linger, they corrode confidence, they force humility, and humility is not something legal systems handle well. The rise of true crime as entertainment complicates everything. Stories are monetized, timelines are edited, characters are shaped. Even with good intentions, distortion is inevitable. The question becomes not whether bias exists, but whose bias dominates. The staircase does not absolve Michael Peterson. It also does not condemn him conclusively. Instead, it indicts a system that pretends certainty is always possible. It asks whether justice should value finality over accuracy, and whether society is willing to live with unanswered questions. As technology advances, forensic science improves, but old verdicts remain, locked, resistant, immutable. The gap between knowledge and justice widens. What should be done with cases like this? Reopen them all? Trust evolving science? Accept ambiguity? There is no clean solution, only trade-offs. The staircase leaves viewers with an uneasy realization that justice is not a destination. It is a process vulnerable to human error at every stage, and once error enters, removing it is nearly impossible. Michael Peterson walks free. Kathleen Peterson remains dead. The truth remains disputed, and the staircase remains silent. This is not a story about whether a man is guilty or innocent. It is a story about how easily we convince ourselves we know, and how devastating the consequences are when we are wrong. The most honest conclusion is also the most uncomfortable. We may never know exactly what happened that night, but we know how the system responded, and we know how fragile certainty truly is. The lesson is not cynicism, it is vigilance. Demand better science, demand transparency, demand humility from institutions built on authority. Because the next case will come, and the next staircase will wait.